Hey everyone, welcome to the Diesel and Law podcast, also known as RHE, Respect, Humility, and Empathy podcast. And the reason we have that name is we really want to emphasize how important it is to have respect, humility, and empathy when dealing with everyone. Respect is obvious. Humility is important because you can't learn unless you're humble. And empathy is important too, because we got to realize people are different from us. They've had different experiences, and we've got to be empathetic to what they're going through.
Certainly.
So that's absolutely important. Today, I'm going to throw it to Diesel. What are we talking about today, man?
All right. Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is how I got the name Diesel.
Were you into trucks? Were you into cars or trucks, or do you look like Vin Diesel?
Okay, I don't think I so much look like him, but
you got the head.
Maybe it's the same hair, same skin tone. But during my separation, I was doing stand-up comedy as like a coping mechanism. Really helped me. It was a really good avenue for doing that. And one of the guys noticed like my Facebook name was Isaiah Diesel, and he goes, because we'd always take turns like making fun of each other. We'd go up and then we'd all make fun of it. It was like the best release, best outlet. It was so much fun. But he goes up there and he goes, I guess you got the name Diesel because you kind of look like Vin Diesel. And he goes, I can see it. He goes, if Vin Diesel had a stroke. And I used to say, yeah, I'm like Vin Diesel. I'm a bulky version of Vin Diesel. So
there you go. Wow.
But you know what? Comedy can be a really good avenue, and if we're trying to find common ground here, that's everybody loves comedy. It doesn't matter if you're political or if you're atheist or
it actually plays a critical role in society, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally a critical role.
Yeah, I agree.
Because here's the thing, right? If you watch Shakespeare or a movie or a play or anything, you listen to the court gesture, you listen to the clown, you listen to the fool, you listen to the blind guy, you listen to the character who normally the lunatic, because that's the character who's telling the truth in the story.
Interesting.
Yeah. See, comedy is a way to critique something, to tell somebody about something that if you told it to them plainly, they'd kill you. But when you wrap it up in jokes or in humor, you take something that's traumatic or something that's important, you wrap it up in humor, and now it becomes presentable, and it's sort of a way of back channeling to the powers that be. Hey, this is a problem. We need to look at it. Look at what Saturday Night Live does, right? Saturday Night Live, which is this comedy show that takes place every Saturday night, like at midnight in the United States. It's been airing for like 40, 50 years now.
Right.
But they always do these little comedy routines where they're making fun of the powers that be and the way that things are done. They're critiquing stuff. That's the role comedy plays. So I didn't mean to interrupt, but I really had to interject that because it's huge. People don't realize that comedy is actually crazy serious.
Do you know Russell Peters?
I'm not sure.
Really funny Canadian Indian comedian. Really funny guy, but he gives like a lot of observational humor as an Indian immigrant, and he's Canadian, but he does like a lot of like the accents and stuff. But he makes fun of every race. Like he absolutely holds no punches. Like people like him, Lisa Lampanelli, and Chris Rock. To me, as a father of a half Asian a daughter who's her birthday today, by the way, she was born right in the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, and so she turns 3 today. To me, I think one of the ways we can deal with racism is to one, be open about these differences. Let's not hide. Oh, you can't mention that. You can't talk about this taboo. As long as we're doing it so in a loving manner and for laughs. It's one of the reasons why Chris Rock is one of my favorite comedians, because you can't talk about truths. You know what I mean? You can't talk about truths. I remember one day he was talking about. He said why Arabs or why Muslims don't, the extremists, they don't take black captives, and he says, because we make bad bargaining chips. And he's like making a joke about it, but it's like the whole Black Lives Matter concept, it's like
Right.
he was talking about how Black lives just simply do not have the same kind of value in society. And there's nothing even remotely controversial about that. Maybe the way that they go about, I totally disagree with their methods, but to make that observation that like, hey, they were not valued the same way. I mean, I'll tell you who did this in a brilliant way. Michael Moore?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, his first movie, which I think was his best, is called Roger and Me. He got way corporate afterwards. He did a social experiment in the movie, and what he does is he shows a black guy getting shot, and then 5 minutes later, he shows a woman beating a rabbit and like skinning it live on camera, and he got a lot of outrage over that. And he's like, the joke's on you guys, because you guys just got punked, because I was showing that there would be more outrage of a rabbit being killed than a black guy being killed on TV. So it's a very brilliant commentary that he did. So that's going to lead me to today's topic, which is going to be a little bit about politics and just how our own personal views can affect that. Mm-hmm. I think it's impossible to not have your own views affect what your concept. You try to be objective, sure, but I don't think it's possible,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, your worldview is like the color of the lenses on your glasses. If you're wearing red or green tinted glasses, you're going to see everything tinted with these colors, and it actually makes a difference. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
So it matters.
I'll tell you, first and foremost, I am a Christian, and I make no apology about that, but I do apologize for the way a lot of Christians want to project their values onto other non-Christians. And to me, I'm completely against that. For the sake of my religion, I don't want the government involved, not because I don't value my religion, but it's because I do value it. And I do think that involving the government in any way actually significantly reduces its power. So I would say I'm probably more secular than your average atheist as far as the government goes, but I very strongly believe in putting it inside of a church and individually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm technically an agnostic atheist, right? A 5-6 on the Dawkins scale for those who know what that is. Basically,
I just found out.
Yeah, I'm can't say 100% for certain there's no such thing as a God. I'm pretty sure there isn't. But I can't say that absolutely. And while that technically makes me an agnostic on the question of God, I'm definitely atheist in your religion. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to government, I kind of have some very simple beliefs. First of all, I don't think that atheism has a whole lot of bearing on my political beliefs. I could be wrong about that, but to me, I don't think it does. I believe, generally speaking, that government is a tool of society. The society should be free to decide how they want to use that tool, and hopefully they use it responsibly. Generally, I would say that the majority should rule, but with frank exceptions. And we have exceptions like in our Bill of Rights. Otherwise, the majority should rule. Of course, that's not how government is practiced in the United States today. We have what I call socialism for the rich, rugged individualism for everyone else, to paraphrase Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I am a socialist. I do prefer that the workers own and control the means of production. That's what socialism means to me. I know it means different things to different people, but I like going back to the roots, to the original official definition. The workers should own and control the means of production. But I also think that government should look out for the people in society, that there's a certain amount of I am my brother's keeper that should come into it. But ultimately, that should be up to the people to decide how much of that they want and why. And I'm okay with that.
Careful, you're quoting the Bible there, buddy. I have a general idea that I do believe that maybe as far as the government, like a deism position is appropriate to say. And a lot of Christians improperly believe that a lot of the founding fathers were Christians. and
Mhm.
they weren't. They were something along the lines of like deism. And if you want to define deism, I would say deism is the bastard child of a theist and an atheist. If you have a bastard, illegitimate child between them, you get someone who's kind of like, okay, I believe in a God, but I don't believe in religion, for example. So,
Mhm.
and the reason why I think that's important to say that there's a creator with inalienable rights is because we do have to have some kind of foundation for human rights. And I do believe in the Bible gives the best foundation for that. It says, the book of James says that with our mouths is we curse people who are created in God's image. And so it says that like at the most basic level, like we shouldn't even say bad things about people
Mhm.
because they have like value. There's value in their life. So I do believe having a general affirmation of a God, not the Jesus Christian God, is best society, as opposed to like a secular government
Mhm.
in North Korea, for example, or China. I do believe that's a better model,
Mhm.
but definitely not the Christian God. You know.
Yeah. Well, and that gives me an idea for another show when we get to it, but we should have a show where we talk about what is the nature of God. I think that would be a
Sure.
compelling show because that speaks directly to some of the answers we would give to this question. But ultimately, when it comes to rights, I don't think rights actually exist. They don't actually exist in nature at all. Nature does not recognize any rights. If you dispute that, go live on a desert isle or something, and tell nature to respect your rights to life and so on. Nature does not acknowledge that. So I think rights are really what we create. Technically, they're
Mm-hmm.
probably privileges, but nonetheless, I think it behooves us, just on the basis of empathy and respect alone, to establish a body of rights, and we don't allow the majority to infringe upon those rights, because
Right.
there are going to be minorities in every society, not just racial minorities, but minorities when it comes to belief, philosophy, attitudes, ways of doing things.
Denomination.
Yeah, exactly. Denomination. And so, how do we protect your right to have a conscience and to, freedom of speech and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
If we don't recognize those rights, then the society can quickly become very oppressive indeed. But you also
Right.
have to draw boundaries, right? You can't give somebody an absolute right to freedom of speech, because then they could say things that are outright horrible, or things that incite people to violence. They could shout
Slander.
fire in a crowded theater, so but then where do you draw the line, right? Maybe somebody wants to say something that's controversial, but they have a point behind it. Do you censor that? How do you censor? What do you censor? Do you
That's
censor?
wow.
Yeah,
That's a
so
whole other topic right there. I mean,
yeah,
we'd have to
but you
do
have to
ones
draw a
very
line somewhere,
specifically about that. Right.
you know
Right. That's a hot topic right there.
Yeah. So where do you draw that
Yeah.
line? But these are questions that societies have to answer. I think everybody should get an opportunity to kind of vote on these things. But again, there are certain things where it's not subject to a vote. And the it, it's just critical. You have to acknowledge certain basic fundamental human rights
Yeah.
and freedoms. Otherwise, you don't live in a free society at all.
And that's the concept of a representative a republic, because absolute democracy is not good, because you get to say, well, 51% of the people think that black shouldn't have any rights, and then that's what
Yep.
you could
Yep.
devolve into.
Yep.
So I do want to start off the topic. One of the topics with something very controversial. It's with the topic of abortion, because I could tell you on a personal level, I'm 1 gazillion% against abortion, but the caveat in that is I do believe that as a male, like I'll never understand what that's like for a woman, or to have to carry around the child of incest or rape or something like that. So for me to like make that projection onto the woman is, I feel it's out of place for me.
Mhm.
I think as a society we should be working to make abortions obsolete, to where like they don't even exist anymore, but not because they're illegal. So that's a different paradigm to think about it. You can make something like, for instance, in South Korea, I live in South Korea. The government finally like, okay, our birth rate is declining too much. We can't keep allowing all these abortions. It's kind of used as like a means of young women use it for birth control, you know? So they're like, okay, let's outlaw it. Well, women are just jumping on a plane to Japan or China, so it doesn't really solve the issue at all, you know? So if women get pregnant in America and they just take a plane over, if we legal, make it illegal, and they go down to Mexico and they have a botched operation, no one's really winning in that situation. So I think what we need to do is work to make it unnecessary, I would say. You know?
Yeah, I agree. You know, I love economics, and I really think economics is, well, it drives a lot of our decisions. In fact, really the definition of economics is how we solve the fundamental economic problem, which is how do we meet unlimited demands with scarce resources. It's not just about money, dollars and cents. You know, the scarce resources could be your time. You know, you only have so many heartbeats, so many years of life, and so on. How do we manage all of these resources that we do have in order to achieve all of our wants? And when a person comes to the point where they make a decision, do I keep this baby or do I get an abortion in the pregnancy? Again, there's all kinds of economic factors. Here's my deal. I hate abortion. I think it's awful. I think it's terrible. I don't know anybody who likes it. I don't know anybody who loves it. I don't know anybody who is like, oh, wow, an abortion. No, everybody hates abortion, even the people who are getting them. You know, it's not a pleasant experience. It can't be. I also want to say that I'm a man, and this is really an issue that I prefer women kind of take the lead on. This is an issue where we as men need to shut up and sit down. But since we're here and we're talking about it, and I can have an opinion, I'll share my opinion. Like you, I believe we should do absolutely everything we can, short of straight up outlawing it, to make it obsolete or unnecessary. That means education. That means teaching people, beginning, of course, with abstinence, but also different methods to control and regulate, you know, their reproduction. There's all kinds of things we can do. And then if a person is going to have a child, or if they get pregnant, we have to make it feasible for them
to
foresee a situation where, well, what if I have this kid? Is it a ticket to poverty? Is it a ticket to some kind of, I'm going to be chained to a toddler for the rest of my life, which, by the way, that's not at all the case. And I will also say that I've never met a person who chose to keep their kid who regretted it. But let's say, you know, we provide economic incentives and economic aid. We can't just be pro-birth. We really have to be fundamentally pro-life at every level of our society, from conception to natural death. And if you're not pro-life on those levels, then you're just pro-birth. And frankly, I don't want to hear from you. I'm not interested.
So my friends, my conservative Republican friends, frankly, they lose all the credibility in the world on this one issue alone, because of the fact that they simultaneously create the situations that make women want to get abortions in the first place. So their values are in such a bad position that they make it more likely to happen, and then they just want to sit back and then play moral God. So I'm completely against that one. The other thing I do want to say is, if you were to crack open the book of Acts and you were to start reading what happened exactly after Jesus was taken into heaven, the people's responses, what you would find in there is that the people start changing their behavior so much that it winds up affecting the local economy. And for example, the people just stop buying these idols, and these people get so angry at that, they're like, we're losing money out of this. So I believe if Christians were to be doing the right things and demonstrating Christ, like, you wouldn't need to picket against like a weed or bars or strip clubs or anything like that. Like, if you're doing the right thing, these things are going to stop becoming an issue. And so I believe in addressing these from a spiritual side. Like, I believe passing laws doesn't address the spiritual side that needs to be addressed. And so on another issue I want to talk about would be like a gay marriage. You know, again, on a personal level, I'm opposed to gay marriage. Like, I wouldn't attend a gay marriage, or would I perform one, you know. And I love gay people. I have, you know, I'm not going to dehumanize gay people. That being said, I do believe it's a sin. It is not permitted inside of the Bible. But on the other side of that, I don't have the right to project to a gay person that they can't be married or they can't have a wife or a boyfriend. Like, I don't have that right. I don't even have a right from the Bible. I can say that I believe you should be allowed to marry Melania Trump, but I know biblically speaking, that's not even a legitimate marriage as far as the Bible's concerned. But, you know, I would never, ever in a billion years say legally to a divorced person, you cannot get remarried. I would say ethically you shouldn't in the realms of the Bible, but I'm not going to perform the wedding and I'm not going to attend the wedding. Just in the same way with the gay person, but I see no basis to do so inside of the realm of the government, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, my take on that issue is, frankly, any two consenting adults should be permitted to, get married if they want. Frankly, I think to some degree it's an anachronism that we make it necessary because we tie certain privileges
Right.
to the idea of being married. But really, if two people want to commit themselves to one another, it's nobody else's business but theirs. If they want
Oh,
to have a
sorry.
ceremony, go ahead.
Anachronism. Sorry. What is it?
Oh, something that's outdated,
Okay.
something
Okay.
that's old, like,
Archaic.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's like if, you want to do it, that's fine. If you don't want to do it, that should be fine too. I do think there should be a law that any two people can designate another person as like they have the same privileges that a spouse has, and it might be the spouse, but it could also be a brother or a sister, or
Okay.
somebody
I
who you've
see.
lived with for a long time, so that this
Yeah.
person could come visit you in the hospital, make critical decisions for you in
Right.
your
Right.
care, have certain rights and privileges that are usually only extended to a spouse. And whether they're same sex or not, whether you're related or
Mm-hmm.
not, none of that should matter. There should
Right.
just be this designated caregiver, and it should be very simple as you filling out a paper and mailing it off, and boom, that's done, or an
Yeah.
electronic form online even. So
No,
yeah,
that
you
make it
know,
easy.
exactly. But any two consenting adults that, for me, if there's divorce, it should really just be a question of how do we divvy up the property, which is
Right.
kind of what it's become. But otherwise,
Well, in kids. Yeah.
yeah, and kids and all that, yeah, you have to take care of the kids and look after their well-being.
But let me interject here for a second because you said two people, and I tend to lean more libertarian. I'm like, why are you telling a Muslim or a Mormon? Like, what gives you that right? I mean, if a Mormon wants to marry three women, I can't imagine having three mother-in-laws. But hey, if you can manage more than one mother-in-law, I don't see, like, I'm not for it on a personal level. But you know, even with that, you take a look at the Old Testament, you see a lot of people doing polygamy. I do think that I do believe that if a Muslim wanted to practice their religion by having more than one wife, then it seems as though you're infringing on their First Amendment rights. So I just don't, I don't see it personally.
Well, I think laws against polygamy are really there to protect the man because, look, guys, heart to heart here, right? Do you really want to be told on a Saturday morning to clean out the garage by three different people 3 times before 9 a.m.? Do you really want to hear that? Okay, it protects you. No, but seriously, that being said, I think, yeah,
Oh my God.
we can extend this to people
Wow.
who, because there are people who are in non-traditional
Oh,
relationships, right? You have people where, they have the spouse, and then they have kind of the third person,
Sancho.
they're
We call them Sanchos.
yeah, but it's not Sancho Sancho. It's polyamory, I think, is what it is. But there's this thing where you have your spouse, but you also have somebody else, and you're all three committed, and there
Oh,
could be
okay.
all kinds of non-traditional, non-standard arrangements. And frankly, I'm kind of okay with that as long as they're actually consensual. And
Yeah, that's a good part.
who am I to say you can't have two or three wives? I mean, maybe you want to
Yeah.
sign up for that. You know what? Go for it. Go for
You
it.
know what?
You know,
You know what? If I'm just going to speak
or two or
honestly
three
about,
husbands.
that's what I was going to say
You
right
could
now.
flip
If I'm
this.
to be honest about this, I don't see one man able to take care of more than one woman. I would think, if I'm just being honest, it would take multiple men to be able to take care of one woman, because it seems like the demands that a woman would make out of a man. I know you're joking, that was a very funny joke, but the amount of like kind of personal time and attention that women want, it seems like a lot of guys have a hard time fulfilling that, you know. So if you're going to say, okay, if one guy's having a hard time doing that with one, what's the likelihood you could do that with two or three? And I'll be the first to say I have a hard time with one, so I can't imagine any scenario. I think if you could clone me, if you could make a two of me, maybe, and my wife didn't know the difference, maybe we'd be able to comfortably take care of her. But I just could not, you know, far be it from me to say you can't, but I can't see that realistically working as far as guys. Maybe with multiple husbands, that seems more practical. But yeah, I like the way you said it's there to
Yeah,
protect us.
it might be unreasonable to expect that one person is going to meet all of your needs.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
That's another thing.
this is why we have friendships and hobbies and clubs and
Yeah.
relations and
Yeah.
all these other
Thank you.
things that we
Yeah.
do because
Yeah.
you know uh and it could come down to very practical things, right? Your wife might say, hey, you know what, I really need someone to fix the car, but you might be like me, just be a total bookworm and not know how to fix the car. A good thing, the guy across the street knows how to do that. Does that mean they get bedroom access? Not necessarily. But this is why a society is important. This is why I say
Mm-hmm.
I am my brother's keeper. We
Mm,
should pool our talents and our resources and work together to make things better. It takes a village
mm-hmm.
to raise a kid, and I'm
Mm.
totally cool with all of that. I mean,
Yeah.
how many of us now? I didn't have this upbringing, but I do know there are kids who had this upbringing where they would eat dinner wherever. They'd be at another family's house, and they just feed them. They just take care of
Mm-hmm.
them. And there are
Mm-hmm.
societies that operate that way, and frankly, I think that's okay. I think it's a
Yeah.
natural way to do things. And in the United States, we're so hyper individualistic where it's actually
Mm.
hardwired into us to be selfish.
Mhm,
We're
mhm.
taught to be selfish. We're discouraged from giving too much to others or being too
Yeah.
open with others. It's considered shameful if your kid eats dinner at another parent's house. And that shouldn't be the case at all. So yeah, if the man can't provide absolutely everything, that's traditionally a source of some kind of embarrassment or shame,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
shouldn't be.
It's a really good point. And I live in South Korea, so they are just communally minded 10 times more than
Hmm.
in America. This is one of the reasons why we've been able to do such a good job with the coronavirus, and actually why the a Bakersfield news channel interviewed me about that, and I was able to talk about the cultural side of it. But everybody recycles. Doing things like making too much noise is like in public is like it's not looked down on, because you're making noise, everyone else is going to hear it. So there's a lot of things like that. Another issue I did want to talk about is something like prayer in school, because I love prayer. Prayers changed my life. But um one of the reasons why I would never want it in school, forcefully, mind you, when I was in middle
Hmm.
school, we actually had, like, we would go into one teacher's room to pray, and the principal was an atheist, and he found out about it, and he made us stop. But I would favor that. Like, if you want to go to separately with the teacher or by yourselves, I favor that. But the reason why I don't favor it, as far as like the government enforcing people, is because, first of all, as a Christian, I would not want a Catholic to lead. I would not want anybody praying for to saints or Mary with my children. It's as simple as that,
Hmm. Hmm.
And a Catholic's not going to want my style of prayer, and a Baptist. So I don't want to have that kind of conflicts. I want to pray for my children. I want to pray at home. or on my way to school, work, wherever. I pray in the weirdest times when I'm showering or I'm using the bathroom, and kind of have very candid talks with God, very open about my own failings, ways that I want him to help me. But I think one of my favorite quotes as far as that goes is, as long as there's tests and bullies in school, there's going to be prayer. So, like, we should pray. It's a very personal thing. And even Christ says, like, when you pray, like, go into your closet and pray. You don't need to go out in front of a bunch of people and be loud. And, so I believe it's a matter of honoring the Bible is the reasons why I don't want it. The Bible says in Romans 13 that we need to honor the laws of the land. So in America, it says we cannot establish one religion over another. In South Korea, let me just give you an example. Like in South Korea, I work with an organization, parachurch organization, and they just simply do not have the law restrictions that we do. So you can go into school and teach the government, teach the Bible, teach the gospel. And that's fine. I'm okay with that because that's what the laws of the land say. So as far as in America, I don't think Christianity needs it. It doesn't. You would need it if it was something that was weak. If it was something that didn't have power, you would need the government to say, hey, come shove this down people's throats. But I don't believe that you need that. I believe that it has enough power in of itself. And the ultimate proof of this is that Christianity spread in the Roman Empire under persecution. So that's all the proof I need that Christianity doesn't need the government. And in fact, once the government started getting involved with it, things got pretty bad. I think mixing government and religion is maybe the worst idea that's ever existed. Maybe it's up there.
Well, the government did legalize it, and then Emperor Theodosius made it the official religion of the empire, canceled the Olympics, and actually outlawed paganism. But that was kind of there towards the end of the Roman Empire, although the religion continued to flourish. And that's, in fact, why it's called the Roman Catholic Church, because it's a surviving institution of the Roman Empire.
And look how corrupt that is. Look how corrupt it is.
Well, I'm not a hater. I'll say that I do like the Catholic Church, and I'll leave it at that for the moment. But we would have some very good conversations. Because remember, I grew up. I'm steeped in that particular theology. I know a lot of its apologetics and answers to things, and I think the Catholic Church answers things much more effectively than any other Christian church does. But again, a topic for another time. And again, I am the atheist here. Although an unwilling one.
Yeah. So my biggest beef with them is actually kind of stems from the fact that they have a lot of power and a lot of money that they use on themselves. So that is completely antithetical to my religious views. But that being said, I do want to transition to something, and that is a distinction between a public and private as far as businesses goes, because I do believe in economics as well. And I do believe that the invisible hand can solve a lot of issues, and it should in a free society. For example, the issue as far as the you remember the gay cake bakers that didn't want to make the cake. So I was asked about this, and first and foremost, I've already made it because I don't want this to sound as though I'm promoting gay marriage, because I'm not, but I believe you have the right to do it. Okay. That being said, if there is a Christian, if a Christian example has a church, and we say, in order to work with this church, you have to submit yourself to the Bible. And in order to submit yourself to the Bible, then being like an openly unrepentant homosexual is against the Bible. Doesn't mean that maybe I've known guys who struggle with homosexuality, and there's they're not out in the open with it, but it is something that let's just say they're not in the lifestyle, but it's an issue in their lives, and it's understandable, as with many guys have issues with lots of different things. as we just saw with this Rabbi Zacharias guy, he was just a Christian apologist who was found to have a lot of sexual immorality. And apologetics is like the defense of the faith.
Right.
What I'm trying to say in this is that I do believe that a church has the right to say, hey, if you're not willing, like if you're promiscuous, and this is not a pick on gays, but if I was promiscuous and I'm like, hey, I'm promiscuous, I'm an alcoholic, inside of the realm of the church, which would be like a private institution, I do believe that that's permissible. And I do believe if the Christian baker doesn't want to make the gay cake, they should have their right in the private sector, not in the public sector. Like the government cannot say, we're not going to hire a gay person. It cannot do that. Positively cannot. We're not going to deny this service because you're gay. I would 1 gazillion% be against that. But where I say it is that, hey, if you're going to make that distinction as a gay baker or as a not making the gay cake, then be consistent and don't make the divorce cake. Okay. And if you're going to do both of this, I say you have the right, but there's going to be a lot of people like me who says, if you don't do the divorce, if you do the divorce cake, then, and you're going to have that kind of hypocrisy, I'm not going to shop with you. Then the gay people aren't going to shop with you and their friends aren't going to shop with you. And I do believe that the free market should shut it down that way. But I do tend to be more, a little bit more libertarian in that sense, that I don't believe that they should be forced to violate their religious convictions. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think when you open a business in public to serve the public, that's what you're choosing to do. Money doesn't stink. To quote, I think, Emperor Vespasian to his son when his son was protesting the charging fees for the public lavatories. But ultimately, you're either in business to make money or you're not. If you're in business to preach or do something else, then that's your business. I'm okay with protecting people's sincerely held religious beliefs. But if you're going to sincerely hold those beliefs, then you're right. They really do need to extend across the spectrum. They can't just be single issue beliefs. And even then, if you're out in public and you're providing a service to the public, you're required to provide that service. Now, as an artist, can you compel an artist to create art that they don't want to create? Now, that's a different issue.
Right.
But from a service standpoint, I don't think you should be allowed to refuse service to people, particularly if they belong to a protected class. But as an artist, if you say, I don't want to use my talent to create something for someone else, I think that's a different case.
Yeah.
But then I'm trying to put this in a certain way, and the words are escaping me. But I just have a hard time with people using this to justify, frankly, what I see as a practice of bigotry. I think it's awful.
And you know what? And it's fine that if we agree to disagree on this point, Marshall, because and have respect along. I mean, I've made myself known. If that's your position, I understand that to the nth degree. I'm not for discrimination. I wouldn't do that. Okay. I personally wouldn't do that in their situation. But this kind of goes to like, what do you think should be the role of the government? And I do believe that the government's role should be to not discriminate. So we're on the same page
we
there.
Agree on that.
But again, if I wanted to create, let's just say, for example, I wanted to create a club that was for Mexican males, okay, and then a white woman comes and wants to join my club, and it's a private institution or establishment, then on those grounds, because it is my own house or it is my own institution, is that I can make those distinctions inside of that realm. Again, if you're not looking to make money out of it, let's just say it's some kind of institution, then you're not going to really care if you lose business. If you want an exclusive club. But if you're trying to make money, that's what your goal is. I think that's a really stupid, it's a very idiotic business practice, because then you're not just going to not have the gay people, you're going to have the gay people's families. And the thing is, I just believe you have a gay couple, they want to get married. they want their cake, and this person's not going to sell you the cake, find someone who's going to sell you a cake.
Yeah.
Have some gay people sell them online, or open up your own bakery, whatever. Solve the issue in an open market is my opinion. I think if we don't agree on that point, then let's just move on.
Well,
to the
I
next
think
point, you know?
my problem is I think the market can fail people because, what if it's not gays? What if it's blacks? What if it's women or something, and someone says, I have a sincerely held religious belief that men and women should not interact in business, that there should be no commerce between men and women. I'm very conservative about this. And it could even be a Christian belief. There are Christians who may have that belief, or it could be any made up religion. But what happens then when you only want to practice business, you want to open a public storefront, you want to serve the public, but half of the public is excluded on the basis of their gender or something else, or the color of their skin? What do you do?
That's an idiotic. If you're going to eliminate 50% of your population like that,
I agree.
Base,
I
it's
agree.
idiotic.
But,
so Marshall, sorry. The point I'm trying to make is that you're going to go, and maybe I should have said this more clearly. You're going to go out of business if you do that. So we don't really have to worry about that. That's kind of the subtext of what I was saying. So I'm sorry if I didn't make that more clearly. I do believe you're going to go out of business. And if you're discriminating against women, all right, as a male, there's no way. If you discriminate against my daughter, for racism, for being mixed, and that happens here in South Korea. So I'm not speaking hypothetically. It's a very real situation. You're going to lose my business, and you're going to get 1,000. I'm going to make up 1,000 negative Yelp reviews on you. So I highly suggest you not discriminate against women, because
modern problems require modern solutions.
There you go. You know what? I do want to transition from this point because I want to ask you, what do you find to be the role of atheism or secularism in society?
I don't know. Really, again, to me, atheism is just the idea that there is no God. That's all it is. There's nothing else that's attached to it. There's no requirement that you believe in like evolution or the Big Bang or any of these other things.
Well, you kind of have to. Come on.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's actually the most common, kind of backup, right? But I don't even think those are exclusive to religious belief. Like you can believe in the Big Bang and still be a Christian. In fact, it was proposed by a Catholic priest, right? And the same thing with evolution under Pope John Paul II. The church said, well, we can't ignore the evidence that we may have evolved from pre-human ancestors. So it's not a sin as a Catholic to believe in those things at all. So I don't know that atheism really speaks to the idea of government or tells us what we should think or believe. You can be an atheist and be a monarchist or a fascist or a Republican or a Democrat or whatever you want to be. Atheism just has no bearing on that. I do prefer a secular society, however, where people are free to believe in accord with their heart and their conscience. But ultimately, I also believe that a society should be allowed to kind of choose how it wants to organize itself and its government, as long as it doesn't impact what I feel are essential natural rights. So.
And I do want to close off this point by just saying that in South Korea in 1907, or it's just Korea at that point, but a revival broke out in South Korea because the gospel was could not penetrate the peninsula, and then a revival broke out, and abruptly South Korea is maybe the second largest Christian country in the world. But that happened, and what you wind up happening was some bars were going out of business because people just weren't going there anymore. So I believe in making an impact on people on a micro level, and that will make macro results. And you wouldn't have to, for instance, I'm the father of a daughter. I don't like the concept of strip clubs. I think it's very degrading. I think things like pornography are very degrading to women. But again, I believe if you deal with the spiritual side of it, those problems think of it kind of like the invisible hand of spirituality. Like those problems are going to resolve themselves. So, but I do. So in that sense, I would say I'm very, very, very secularist. I believe religion shouldn't have any kind of role. Like you should use logic and reason. Logic and reason why you should or shouldn't allow, you know, gay marriage or things like marijuana or polygamy. Think about these in a societal issue, and we don't have to invoke the Bible, you know. As it is, I think, you know, a lot of things in the Bible really make sense, you know, like having a foundation for human rights, respecting people, loving people, taking care of people. Those are Christian values that are taught a lot by Jesus Christ. And I think it's good to have those people practicing that, you know. So
Yeah, and I think if more people practice those things, we wouldn't need so much government. But
exactly.
unfortunately, people don't, and unfortunately, people can be awful. And while it would be
Exactly.
great to have the unseen hand of economics, if you will, kind of regulate and control the market, we know for a fact, based on history, that it doesn't quite work that way. And sometimes, while I agree with you that the best way to affect change in society is to convert people's hearts, to
Hmm.
persuade them, to teach them, to show them reason, and have them follow the path of reason, the sad reality is that process can be very slow, or it might never even work, because after all, we've had Christianity for 2,000 years, and guess what? We still have a lot of problems they had in the
Yeah.
time of Christ. So to that degree, I think law is actually a very powerful institution. Think about, for example, the idea of segregation, which we had for 100 years after the American Civil War. Now, there was a campaign that had been launched even before the end of the Civil War to humanize African Americans and to say these are people too. We need to treat them with people, and they need to be given respect and the same rights as everyone else. And we even granted that to some degree on paper, but the fact of the matter is none of that worked. And it wasn't really until we started to crack down and enforce the law that we started to get some kind of parity,
Hmm.
equality between the white and black races in America. Even
Hmm.
today, the black race is still shortchanged.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
to me, law is a very powerful tool, and it should absolutely be used when and where it's
Yeah,
necessary.
absolutely.
It's not the preferred means, but it's downright effective. And when it comes to matters of justice, I think it needs to be used
Yeah.
rather quickly rather than hesitantly. But that's just me. So,
Thank you. Thank you for that perspective. We're not here to figure out everything. We're here to try to understand each other, try to pick each other's
yeah.
brains, and I really appreciate your perspective. So I do want to do a little something different today. Is I want to talk about just so we get to know each other. You know, we're getting to humanize each other and find some common ground. We want to talk about some our top five favorite books of all time, or ones that have just had just the strongest impact on your life, and just a quick 2 or 3 sentences why. I'll go first and say 1984 is my favorite book of all time by far. Like, is 1984 and then like, well, except for the Bible. Right? Bible, 1984, everything else. I think he understands psychology and the human condition and just our natural inclinations and kind of like how abusive power will go if it's left unchecked. And I think that's a lesson we just simply did not learn. You know, I think everybody in high school should be forced to read that because it's happening every single day. You know, double
Mhm.
speak, cognitive dissonance. It's 2 + 2 = 5 somehow. It's
Mhm.
happening. You know.
I'm going to agree with you on 1984. It actually is one of my favorite books. And I'm a big fan of George Orwell, as well as some of his other books. Animal Farm is great. Down and Out in Paris and London is great. By the way, he was a democratic socialist, actually.
Mm,
So it's really cool
mm,
to get his perspective. For me, it's about revolutions and what happens when revolutions are betrayed, and things like that. So to me, I'm into all this maybe for slightly different reasons than you,
mm.
but I do find it deeply compelling, and I'd like us to do a show
I
on
would
that
have to.
particular
We
book.
have to.
Included in that, Brave New World which is in a similar vein, but it's an utopian type world, or an artificially created utopia, with sort of a dark underbelly, a very dark underbelly, actually,
Never heard of
but
it.
really cool. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I think that should totally be read. I also am a big fan of Arthur C. Clarke. Anything by Arthur C. Clarke is a science fiction author. He's the guy who came up with the idea of a geosynchronous orbit for satellites, which is where a satellite
Wow.
orbits it hovers above a certain point above the Earth. Because when you park a satellite so high up at such an altitude, its
It'll fall.
rotation is perfectly matched with the rotation of the Earth, so it stays in one spot, which is really kind of cool. But anyway, Arthur C. Clarke, I like him for two reasons. One, he tried to be scientifically accurate with everything that he wrote when it came to physics and everything that he knew at the time. And the other thing is, all of his stories, he ends them with a little bit of a twist, which I really, really, really like. I love those twist endings. And if I had a favorite author besides him, it would be Jared Diamond, who's wrote on anthropology. He's an anthropologist, among other things. I think he may still be active at UCLA. He's kind of long in the tooth, though. He might have been retired, or he might be professor emeritus by this time. I really don't know. He's published a number of books on
Any particular
anthropology.
one that stands out to you?
Guns, Germs, and Steel is really remarkable.
Oh,
because
okay. I know.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that one. I know that one.
Yeah, that one answers a lot of questions, especially about the origins of inequality in human societies. And in
Interesting.
fact, when I first read it, I was really skeptical about it. Like, I was like, no, this can't be. But then as
Okay,
he laid
I
out
know
the
that guy.
case and I considered the evidence, it changed my mind. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
So I am really not a fiction guy. I prefer nonfiction and historical stuff and religious writings. But I think a couple of years ago, I got my hands on a book called The Remains of the Day by Kazu Ishiguro. He's actually British, but he's Japanese. They have a movie on it's actually on Netflix. They made it into a movie, which is a relatively accurate. It's kind of hard to adapt books without doing them justice, but it's relatively accurate. You miss some nuances in there, but essentially what's it about? It's like about this butler who's serving like this really wealthy lord in the UK, and it just talks in there just about like having like a level of cognitive dissidence in yourself and not being able to stand up for the right thing, and like looking back at your life and saying like, wow, I should have probably said something in this situation. I should have voiced myself, So that's why it's called like The Remains of the Day, what's left after everything you could have done. And for that, I think it's very rich. Probably one of the books that's made the strongest impact in my life, I would say, besides the Bible, is How to Win Friends and Influence People. You familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Well, I got my hands on that after my separation, and it was like chicken soup for my soul. So really helped me out, set me on a path that eventually led me to Jesus Christ. So very grateful. I've probably given that book out to 30 people. So it's been very helpful in my life. And what is your favorite Stephen King?
It's probably a toss-up between it and The Stand, but I think The Stand wins it, although it is really good. But The Stand is probably my favorite.
I heard The Shining is really good. It's virtually nothing like the movie.
That's one of the few I actually haven't read. I've read almost everything he's produced as far as the big novels. But yeah, The Shining is one that I haven't read yet.
Yeah, I've read it. It's probably like 10% of the actual movie. Like it's
wow.
The movie just, yeah, really. And as it is, the movie's so open-ended, you can't really make sense of the movie,
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to read that. So I do want to end off here with my one of the ones that have had one of the strongest impacts as far as my worldview to understanding how limited I am. And I would recommend this to anybody. It's called The Invisible Gorilla. Have you heard of it?
No.
Well, it comes from this experiment that this guy did where he there's these people and they're passing a basketball, and some of them are wearing white shirts and some of them wearing black shirts, and you're supposed to count the passes from the black team or whatever. They're wearing black shirts. And as you're counting, a gorilla comes out and like starts banging his chest, and then he just walks on. And something like at least 50-60% of people don't recognize the gorilla. And then you rewind it and you're like, how did I not see that? It's like, because we have, it's called like unintentional like blindness or bias that we have, that we're expecting certain things. And then when they don't happen that way, we just don't really catch it. And actually it talks in there a lot about how movies are done, because a lot of times like movies have incongruencies and you don't notice them. But of course there's sleuths that look at that stuff online.
Yeah,
they'll find every little frame. But because films are shot, sometimes they have to reshoot a scene like weeks later. They try to recreate it, but it's not possible. So like a straw may be on one side or the other, you know, something like that. But we never catch them because we're just not used to catching things like that in our everyday lives. So it just shows how really limited our perspective is. And that being said too, is I want to close off with two other ones, which is Freakonomics and Outliers. Because if you take a look at both of those books, it shows that things don't always have the explanation that you might think is the most logical. You know, you might just think Asian people are really good at math. That's true, but it's not for the reason that you might think it is. You know, it's not. They don't have the exact things. Don't have the exact correlation that you might think that they do a lot of times. So both of those books really explores some complicated explanations that really just makes you think, maybe I don't have everything figured out, you know? I think those last three books would really make you scratch your head and say, maybe I need to have a little humility. Maybe I need to try to see things from another perspective, you know? So, yeah, I really, really thank you for your input on that. I really hope that people might look into some of these books. I know they've been a tremendous inspiration for me, and really thank you for your opinion. Look forward to seeing you back again with us on the next episode of RHE.
You got it. All right. We'll see you. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.